Awesome. All right, welcome everyone. So, welcome to Delt Week, and we're very excited today. We have our first speaker of the week. He's an innovative facilitator of health. He is the founder of the technique called the energy specific. We're here in his practice today. It's a beautiful practice. We got to see some of his patients and their success stories so far. He inspires others to reach their highest peaks and gets them amazing results on a daily basis. He also hosts retreats every spring in Tahoe usually, right? And we get to learn all kinds of amazing things there from you. So he's also a very specific and clean adjuster, and just a great role model for chiropractic students. So welcome to the stage, Dr. James Huang. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, no, thanks. It's a pleasure, Dylan, and I think, ideally we would be meeting at the school, but it's a pleasure just to connect with you guys via the internet, and it's a pleasure to be your, first speaker.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to answer any questions, and I know that you kind of have some ideas of what you want to ask me. But just today, what did you experience in the clinic? Just coming in?
Yeah, so for example, today, first of all, it was like clockwork. Like, one patient out, the next patient was literally walking in the door at the exact same time. I don't know how you timed that so perfectly well. But yeah, it was great. And then as far as the patient interactions, like, everyone came out just feeling so much lighter and feeling like on a cloud versus when they walked in. It was really cool to see that. And you definitely have a way with people. You also have a way of interacting with their innate. So you do, of course, chiropractic adjustments first, but you also add in different types of supplements to combat many of the toxins that we experience in the world. And so you just have a lot of methods for doing that, which is really interesting to see. So I guess first off, how did you find your way in chiropractic? Like, how did you come to this?
So I bring up this topic a lot, which is, I think for me, number one, I always put out 110% into anything, whether it's studying, working on adjusting, learning about health, connecting with friends. It's always, I put in I have all these stories. Like, one story, one story I'll share is my first year of practice. I'm a big snowboarder, so I went snowboarding, and it just happened to be that day on the mountain they had an airbag where you can do jumps into. So I was like, I've never seen it before, so I was like, I might as well try this. So I started doing it. I was doing 360s, and it was fun. And then I ran into a buddy, and he's like, you should try doing some flips. So he was doing backflips, and so I was like, okay, I'll try. So I actually pulled off a couple backflips onto the airbag, but then I wanted to go bigger, so I went faster on this one run, and I ended up landing at the very end of the bag, and I actually slipped off of it, and I smacked the ground so hard. It was one of my worst injuries. I basically fell 20 feet onto ice, and so this would have been not that bad, but the next day I had a whole list of patients on my schedule, and so I was like, crap. And so, but I wasn't thinking of then. But anyways, I made it through this whole process. I actually went to see a buddy of mine, and he was like, you got to go to the ER. Long story short, I'm looking at my list of patients. I was on crutches. I was my leg was shaking, but I was determined. And so I actually made it to work the next day, and I saw all 16 of those patients. Even though I was in pain, I made it through. But that's kind of part of the drive that I have, is I always commit, and I always follow through. So that's one thing that I recommend. And then number two is mentorship. And so I've been fortunate to have a series of great mentors. And I'd say my first mentor was the Oakland-A's chiropractor. So he was my mentor, and he was the chiropractor for the Oaklands for 31 years, which is pretty unheard of. And so he introduced me into this idea of holistic health, which is why I care a lot about nutrition. I look at even brain function, and the physical aspect, which we understand with the joints and chiropractic and the nervous system. So that's kind of like the long answer to that. But
Awesome. Yeah. One of the things that you often start off by saying is like, once you understand that everything is energy, it kind of makes everything easier to understand. Like you can approach it from a variety of different perspectives, and similarly, like everything is universal intelligence. It's all just expressing through matter.
yes.
So how do you bring that into your everyday practice?
Okay, so there's two things which is really I think easy for chiropractors to understand, that we have innate intelligence, but we also have universal intelligence. So that's like all of nature basically. So all of nature already knows what it needs, and then innate intelligence, our bodies we know what we need. And so because of that, as a practitioner, I can tap into the innate intelligence, and I use, you can call it biofeedback, neurology, muscle testing, but that's just a way that we tap into innate, or I use in my practice. And with that, I can determine what supplements a patient needs, if they're experiencing toxic load, viral load, bacterial load. It's pretty cool. So anyways, that's why it's really fun working with people, because you can pretty much check their energy and find out where they need to be.
Yeah, and muscle testing is a really good way of doing that, because you're going right to the neurology, and that's just the energy coming through right there. Very cool. One of the things that crossed my mind is like, so if everything is energy, then why are there some things that are good for us and some things that are bad for us, some things that are toxic and some things that are nutritional and beneficial, and how do we navigate the interaction between those?
Well, I think the simplest way to answer that is just the natural way, right? There's things that are in nature. So drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, are not natural. They're synthetic. I mean, there's all sorts of chemicals that are in them, and there's going to be side effects, and that's what we see. Like every single drug on the market, it's like, oh, it may cause dizziness, it may cause vomiting. I mean, even low back pain. So that's already a clear indication that's not good for us. But things that are natural, which would be like real food, like grass-fed, happy cows, and you might eat like a ribeye steak. That food is full of nourishment. So there is a organization known as Weston A. Price, which was founded by a holistic dentist, and he talks all about that in terms of nutrition, which is really valuable. But it's about eating nourishing foods, nutrient dense foods. So high load of vitamins. Like a liver, for example, would be loaded with all the B vitamins, pretty much everything in there. So that's what I would say is like natural way versus unnatural. It's the simplest way to put it. So unnatural is going to be man-made, like pharmaceuticals. Natural is going to be the happy animals and the vegetables that are organic, no pesticides. And so we're not putting any toxic chemicals into our body.
Yeah, that's really a simple way of looking at it. And there are so many toxins in our environment now more than ever, really. So you get to see that firsthand every day. And what do you do to deal with that when you see a patient that comes in and it's like, okay, they have this certain type of toxicity?
So this is actually like a great question, because right now this, it's a pandemic. We have this pandemic, and COVID is like rampant. So I've been seeing lots of patients regardless of if they have COVID or not, but I have patients that test positive, I have patients that don't test positive. But what I find in their bodies is heavy metal toxicity. I find high levels of pesticides, and also find what is the other things? Well, those are and sometimes mold and mold and parasites. But those high levels of heavy metals and the pesticides, BT toxins, are usually showing up in patients that are showing symptoms of what you would call dis-ease or flu-like symptoms, or they're not feeling themselves. So
yeah, absolutely. I've noticed that with a lot of the patients that you have, they come in sort of in that fear state of like, we have to wear masks and all those things are, you know, the recommendations that may help, but they're all external things. And chiropractic is very different because when they exit your office, they're like, oh, it's really from the inside out. Like that's how healing occurs. So yeah, that's probably an ongoing conversation that you have with them. But
Yeah,
they
no,
can feel.
everything there is no, so in my opinion there's no such thing as asymptomatic. Okay, every energy will be expressed through the body, and so it'll show up in their body. And so if their body is showing up with the energy of toxicity or energy of fear or energy of infection, it will show up in the body. And so I've never met an asymptomatic patient. So that's already like, just, you know, they're using all these words to trick people, but really it's like there's no such thing as asymptomatic.
Yeah. How do you see the chiropractic profession and other holistic professions like really stepping into a greater role as there's this opposing sort of agenda of fear and like we need things to help us live rather than just ourselves or just the natural world.
You're saying what's going to help our profession reach people more, or?
Yeah, or like how can we really embrace this role of helping people and showing them that they have all the answers they need. They just need to be more with nature.
I think it's everybody expressing the truth in a way, like every single one, like you, like every single one of us. When we express the truth to whether on social media or to our family and friends, then now they know, and then they tell other people, which is kind of like what happens here. A lot of my patients are already referring their friends in. You can write a book, or you could share, you know, just any way to share the truth. I would say that's going to help.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I can definitely see myself doing that more, like reaching out and continuing to perpetuate that. Yeah, for sure.
Sharing your story, you know, I share my story. Like we all have stories of healing, and then sharing. Oh, you know, I went to this chiropractor, went to this acupuncturist. You know, I went to this naturopath, and it was amazing. And like, I didn't have to take drugs. I didn't have surgery. So what's amazing in my life is that I've been a crazy snowboarder. I've fallen 50 feet onto my shoulders, and I've never had surgery, which is pretty amazing.
Awesome.
So I've healed naturally through chiropractic, through nutrition and other ways, and I turned 40 last year, and I'm more functional than I've ever been actually. So this is my story of healing, and that's the truth. And this is why, like, we just share our truth. People will understand that they have hope. They get hope from it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible, because really, to me, that says lead by example.
Yeah.
Like show them that this is possible, and they'll see it. It becomes clear.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of become more and more how I've been with my practice, is sharing testimonials. Like that way, people hear real life stories. I'm not trying to convince anybody. I just share stories.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really nice to see that. Like I always look forward to when I see your stories, and I'm like, oh yeah, there's another person feeling better and spreading the message. So it's great. Yeah. So.
Did you want to talk about toxins? Did you want to bring that up?
Yeah, I would love to go into that and how they interact, right?
Okay, so going back to chemical toxins, there's a lot of chemical toxins, not just pesticides, but if you want to you could think about like all the farming, all the GMOs, and even wine industry, is all these pesticides are being sprayed on the grapes. But what's more close to home for us is actually our water. So we drink water every day, and I'd say the majority of us probably drink water out of a Brita or out of the fridge, and that water comes from East Bay mud. But how do we know what's in that water? So most people know, not most people, people who are into health usually know that there's high levels of chlorine and fluoride that are in our tap water. So if we do the studies, we'll find that those are both very toxic chemicals, and over time, they kind of cause cancer. So we don't want to be accumulating those toxins on a regular basis. But what's really cool is we can neutralize some toxins. So like chlorine, for example, if you combine vitamin C, it will neutralize the chlorine. So you could. That's why people put lemon in the water, and you drink it. It makes it better. So that's a solution, is always neutralizing. Or you can do supplements. You could take supplements if you swim a lot or you chill in a hot tub a lot. So and that's like the best thing you can do, is always learning more about how nutrition works, and then also what the toxins are actually really doing. So education. So this is educated mind, I guess. Like learning more, getting more knowledge. And then if you have a mentor, then you can apply that knowledge. You can use that wisdom and then learn how to do it in a clinical setting.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the most common supplements that you use?
I'd say vitamin D is a huge one, because most people are not getting a lot of sun, but also people are not eating lots of fat. So the vitamins K, A, D, and E are fat soluble. So without fat, and people on low fat diet, they're not absorbing those vitamins. So that's huge. And vitamin D is a hormone, so it helps you deal with your mood, so it makes you happier or like more stable. It also helps you produce bone cells, so you can have stronger bones. So without vitamin D, and also it helps the immune system. So yeah, there's a lot of functions with vitamin D. So I'd say that's a huge one. Vitamin D. Calcium is very similar too for athletes. So I give calcium lactate, which is magnesium, 5-to-1 ratio of calcium to magnesium. So if you get a lot of muscle soreness, or you're a runner and you get tired real quick, like pretty much you just supplement that and you won't get sore anymore. So that's a big one. Let's see, vitamin D. What was another one? Oh, a lot of B vitamins. So B12 and B6. So this is specifically for, I would say, chiropractors. Any disc injury, any neuropathy is going to be supplementing your B vitamins. So I find B12 works really well for the spine, for like a spinal injury, and then B6 more for like a hand or peripheral nerve injury. So I'll keep it simple. We'll just leave it at those for now.
Right, and vitamins are just tools that innate intelligence has learned to use to bring into our cells and to bring into our metabolism and all the byproducts.
So I'll share my approach is I love vitamins, I love supplements, but I think that people can eat right and they won't need so much of it, but because we live in such a toxic world, it's like we're having hangovers. So someone will have like a liver hangover, or you'll have like a spleen hangover, or you'll have a stomach hangover, and so then now you need the supplement. But if you were able to eat properly and avoid toxins, maybe if you lived in Hawaii or New Zealand or in Tahoe, you wouldn't be so exposed, and so that allows you to just get your nutrition from your food.
Yeah. There's other types of toxicities that you also help people work with, like the electromagnetic frequencies.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
So this is huge. Yeah. So this is like a whole another seminar, but but we're surrounded, like even this light bulb, everything is emitting EMF frequencies, but there are ones that are more harmful than others. So I would just say in general, right now the simplest tip is just balancing out the EMF or the blue light that you get exposed to with your eyes. So I mean everyone's zooming now, or mostly, and so because of that, you're overstimulating your eyes. Normally we go out into nature, we see the sun, but once it hits 5:30 or 6 o'clock, the sun goes down, and we're no longer stimulating our eyes. But now we're constantly on our phones, so we're getting, which leads to sometimes, most of the time, it leads to adrenal fatigue, is when you get really tired. And so, because we're overworking our brain and our eyes more than ever. So you could get blue light filtered glasses, and that will help. You can also stop using your electronics after the sun goes down, and only use it when the sun is up. And then try to use electronics in natural daylight, not like in an office space like where there's no natural light.
Yeah.
those are simple tips. There's a lot more you can do, and then going into nature, like going into like the woods.
So yeah, I left off. We're talking about EMFs, but also then patterns that you see in practice, and mentioned how today even there was a lot of tenderness in the kidneys.
Okay, so going back to EMFs, what I see a lot when people have sensitive to EMFs is a lot of headaches. So they experience a lot of headaches. They don't sleep well. And they usually have abnormal pain in their body, like for whatever reason, like I don't know why, but my leg hurts. They didn't have a trauma, so those are symptoms of EMF pollution. Those are probably the main ones. But and then you were saying other patterns that show up with fear, a lot of fear and anxiety. I would say the biggest one actually is muscle spasms, so they're really tight. All their muscles are tight. And then they may have lower back pain because the kidneys are associated to fear from Chinese medicine, which will shut off the psoas muscle. Those are the main patterns that I see. But also difficulty breathing. I mean, it's so crazy, but because of the anxiety, people are they can't breathe. And I've had a number of patients like that. They're just like in shock. Basically, they're oversympathetic. So they're hypersensitive. That's the worst thing that's going on right now with the news and spreading the fear, putting everybody into this really anxious mode.
Yeah, tense state for sure. Yeah, been noticing that a lot. You get to see it firsthand, which is a blessing, kind of.
Yeah, and then the amazing thing is when you give the right treatment, which is basically bringing the body from sympathetic to parasympathetic, you see the body totally heal and it just relaxes. And I didn't go over this with the energy specific, but I check everybody's energy field, and so the body is magnetic and electric, and so it actually has a magnetic field. And in some of the things I've read, and also in the work that I do, I find that the field can go anywhere from you're from just here to 50 feet, and every once in a while there's an anomaly. It might go like to 100, but normally I'd say it goes can go maximum about 50 feet from the body, which is pretty big. And that's an expression of your health. So the bigger your field is, the healthier you are.
Cool. Would you say that people will experience like a bigger field depending on whether they're in nature, and it just depends on like who they're surrounded by and their environment?
So again, once you go into nature, you're breathing clean air.
Yeah.
So that's huge. Also, all of every single tree is just like giving you energy. So you're like energy high, especially if you live in the cities where it's polluted, and then you go into nature like that. And then I don't know. I think there's so much this natural kind of bliss high that you get. And I know when you came to the retreat, you just felt it. You literally just go outside, you just hang out for a few minutes, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I feel high. And your cells, because your cells are getting what they need.
Exactly.
And I can share a little. There is actually a great book. It's called The Cancer Answer. It's an old book written by a medical journalist. I forget his name, but it talks about everything that the cells need. They need good water. And that's where you can get a chlorine filter, and you can filter the water so that you drink clean water without chlorine in it. And then it also needs good, kind of happy communication. So, which is what we often share that news to patients, oh, your body's gonna get better. You have intelligence in your body that your body heals on its own. It actually heals itself. So that's really good news for a patient. Versus you're gonna die in 6 months. So when we share that information to the cells, they're like, yes, my body can heal on its own. It can thrive. And so that's one. And then the other one would be cell communication, cell. I can't remember if it's just basically feeding the cells. So eating good healthy foods, non-GMO, so you're feeding your cells what it needs. And then the last part would be cell exercise, and so that's where we actually have to stress the cells. So if we don't ever stress our immune system, it doesn't get challenged, it doesn't improve. So we want to always, we use our bodies, we use our muscles, we use our brain. We have to be active. So that's so crucial to cell health.
Totally, yeah. And that's something that often gets forgotten is we always want to be challenging ourselves. That's how muscles grow, that's how we grow. Yeah, we can't live in a totally sterile world. Like, we're supposed to have that interaction with our environment. That's actually normal.
Yeah, we shouldn't be afraid of a sneeze. Like, come on. If I sneeze, I mean, you shouldn't run out and just hide, for the hills. It's like, it's just a sneeze.
Yeah.
So.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that brings up a question that I had, which was, so we as humans, we tell stories, we tell ourselves stories, and when we live in a society which has different pollutants and toxins in it, it's sometimes overwhelming. Like, people will say, well, I've been living in this house or this environment and it's been toxic for 10 years. And my question is, like, how quickly, when given the right tools, how quickly can we actually heal from those things? Is it faster than we think?
Well, can you give an example?
So let's say somebody has been living with mold in their house for, most of their childhood. So let's say 10 or 12 years, and then they move away to college and they start to, and they're exercising and they're playing soccer and they start to see say a chiropractor or see you for their health. How quickly can they recover from that history?
Well, I think it's all about finding the root cause. So there's that, the root issue. So if it is the mold, we get rid of the mold, move out of the house or something. But if it's the nervous, like if it's some part of the brain that's not functioning, or there's some trauma, then we address the trauma. So kind of like thoughts, toxins, and traumas, right? So it's one of those three, or it could be all of them. And so when we address the body, then it will heal. And so I've had patients that have recovered in one visit, and then I've had patients that took 6 months. So I'd say everybody's different, but definitely most people won't have to live with their issues for the rest of their life. I think a lot of that is they're misinformed by maybe other medical practitioners. There's a lot of again, this book here, there's miracles. There's a lot of miracles that can happen every day. Like, it doesn't need to be like, oh, you have to live with this for the rest of your life.
Yeah, you can really transcend that and then move on.
Yeah.
I think that gives people a lot of hope. So that's great to hear. What sort of direction would you like to see chiropractic as a whole move into as we move forward?
I think just being a little more bold. I think it's during the beginning of the pandemic, I saw a lot of chiropractors kind of like run for the hills, and I think this is during any crisis we're needed the most. So we should be, if we don't have the skills, we've got to learn the skills, or if we don't have the knowledge, we've got to learn the knowledge, so that we're equipped to be bold and to stand firm and share the truth, that we can help people with their immune system. We can help people with whatever they got, any issues in their body. Pretty much, we should be able to improve their life. I always say we can improve people's quality of life. So we may not cure people, but we're going to improve their quality of life so that they can enjoy life and go hiking and biking and play with their kids and whatever it is that they want to do, they should be able to. So that's what I'd say. Just being bold as a profession, and kind of like the old school chiropractors, like not be afraid to go to jail. Like, because we shouldn't go to jail, and if people put us in jail, then those are the people that should be in jail. Actually,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll fight with it, fight for it as long as we can.
Yeah.
I share that vision as well. So that's really exciting to hear and refreshing to hear. Let's see, is there anything else? Well, I guess just maybe let us know how we can find you and how to reach out to you, follow you, all of those things.
Okay, so the easiest way, I guess, I'm pretty active online on Instagram, so you can find me on Instagram at Dr. James Huang. I think that's it. Yeah, Dr. James Huang. So that's Huang is my last name. Also, recently I just wrote a chapter in this book. It's called Miracles or Wake Up Miracles. It's online. It's on Amazon. So you can find me there, and all my information's in there too. This just came out, so I didn't. I'm not trying to promote it, but it's just a great. It's actually a great book full of other practitioners, other healers, and there's probably like maybe half or maybe a little less than half of them are also chiropractors.
Joe Dispenza's.
Yeah, Joe Dispenza's in here. Yeah, there's a couple of Dr. Brimhall. It's a great book. So that's the easiest way, and you can come visit me in my clinic anytime. So
Awesome. Thanks for extending that to us. And yeah, any other questions from you? We're good.
No, I'm good.
All right.
sweet,
Yeah.
sweet. No, that's awesome.
Sweet.
Yeah. Aw.
Thanks so much.